She stepped onto the stage, young and unassuming, ready to speak for millions. The host smirked, calling her a puppet to a laughing crowd. No one blinked at the jab. Moments later, that same woman turned his stage into her platform, exposing truths he couldn't counter. So who was really out of their depth? Before we dive into the story, please like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Your support helps us reach more people with stories that spark real conversations. And thank you for joining us. Karoline Leavitt walked onto the polished stage of The Late Show, her navy blazer looking plain against the shimmering backdrop of lights and sleek furniture. At 27, she was the youngest White House press secretary ever. But the audience's polite claps felt more curious than warm. Stephen Colbert, perched behind his desk, flashed a grin that didn't reach his eyes. He leaned forward, mic gleaming, and said, "Folks, meet Karoline Leavitt, Trump's TikTok press secretary." The crowd chuckled, a few clapping louder. Egged on by the jab, Karoline adjusted her mic with steady hands, her lips curving into a calm smile. She'd faced worse than a TV host's smirk. In the wings, Tom Reed, a grizzled stagehand with a faded baseball cap, watched her closely. He'd seen plenty of guests buckle under Colbert's charm, but Karoline's posture, shoulders back, eyes clear, caught his attention. She didn't fidget. She didn't blink too fast. The studio buzzed with energy, the audience settling into their plush seats, ready for a show. Colbert wasted no time. "Karoline, you're what 27 gotta say. It's bold putting a Gen Z face on Trump's media blackout. Ape. Reuters poof. Gone from the White House. What's that about?" His tone was light, but the words landed like a challenge. Karoline tilted her head, her voice soft but clear. "We're just cutting through the noise. Stephen, people want the truth, not headlines." The audience tittered, expecting more. But her words floated past, unnoticed. A chipped coffee mug sat on Colbert's desk, its worn handle catching her eye. It reminded her of her mom's kitchen in New Hampshire, where she'd grown up watching her parents grind through long shifts. That mug grounded her, a quiet anchor in the glitzy chaos. Colbert leaned back, smirking, cutting noise. "Huh? Sounds like dodging questions. You're the face of this. What? Anti-media crusade?" The crowd laughed again, louder this time, feeding off his confidence. A woman in the front row, Sarah Nguyen, a college student with a phone in hand, raised an eyebrow. She'd come to see Colbert roast a Trump lackey. But Karoline's calm was throwing her off. Sarah tapped her screen, ready to post about it on X. Karoline didn't flinch. She'd expected the barbs. Back in New Hampshire, she'd learned to let taunts roll off kids at school mocking her thrift store clothes, teachers doubting her big dreams. She'd clawed her way to D.C., not by shouting, but by working harder than anyone else. Colbert's jab stung, but she kept her eyes on him. Steady. Tom Reed shifted in the wings, his gut telling him this wasn't a typical guest. Most would have cracked a nervous joke by now. The host pressed on, undeterred. "Come on, Karoline. You're the shiny new prop for Trump's second act. Gen Z vibes. TikTok videos cute. But are you actually calling shots?" The audience roared, clapping like they'd already won the round. Sarah Nguyen hesitated, her thumb hovering over her phone. Something about Karoline's quiet focus made her pause. Janet Myers, Colbert's producer, stood backstage, arms crossed, nodding at the crowd's reaction. She'd prepped Colbert to go hard, banking on Karoline crumbling under the spotlight. Karoline's smile didn't waver. She leaned forward, her voice still soft but edged with steel. "Ever fact-check your own headlines, Stephen?" The question cut through the laughter, sharp and unexpected. The audience quieted, some shifting in their seats. Colbert blinked, caught off guard, then waved it off with a chuckle. "Oh, we're fact-checking now, cute." The crowd laughed again, but it was thinner, less certain. Sarah's eyes narrowed. Her phone still recording. Tom Reed's lips twitched, like he'd seen a spark no one else noticed. Karoline sat back, her hands folded, the chipped mug still in her peripheral vision. She'd planted a seed. Small but deliberate. The audience didn't know it yet, but the stage was hers. She'd come to speak for people like her parents, not to play Colbert's game. The lights felt hotter now, the air thicker. Something was shifting. And no one, not Colbert, not Janet, not the crowd, saw it coming. Karoline Leavitt paced the dim backstage corridor of the late show, her low heels clicking on the concrete floor. She clutched her phone, scrolling through X posts that stung like paper cuts. Trump's puppet. One read, "Gen Z sellout." Said another. She stopped, exhaling sharply, and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. The chatter of the audience filtered through the heavy curtain, a reminder of the spotlight waiting to burn her. At 27, she was used to being underestimated, but tonight felt heavier, like the world was watching to see her fail. She closed her eyes, and a memory hit her dad, Mike Leavitt, hunched over a factory machine in New Hampshire, grease smudged on his knuckles, muttering about making ends meet. Her mom, Ellen, would come home from night shifts at the hospital. Her nurse's scrubs wrinkled, but she'd still make time to quiz Karoline on history homework. "You're tougher than they know," Ellen used to say. Karoline whispered to herself now. "I'm here for them, not the spotlight." The words steadied her. But the glitzy studio beyond the curtain felt like another planet. The backstage area was all gloss-shiny monitors, catering tables with bottled water and fruit no one touched. It screamed money, power, everything her family never had. She glanced at a framed photo of Colbert on the wall, his grin mocking her. A young woman in the audience, Sarah Nguyen, sat near the front, her phone ready to capture the night. Sarah had seen Karoline's TikTok briefings and wasn't impressed. Another Trump loyalist, she figured. But something about Karoline's quiet pacing backstage, caught through a gap in the curtain, made Sarah pause. Janet Myers, the show's producer, strode past Karoline, her heels sharper, her clipboard clutched like a weapon. She stopped by a monitor, smirking as she spoke to a headset-wearing assistant. "Colbert's ready to tear into her. She's just a kid, won't last 5 minutes." Karoline overheard, her jaw tightening. But she kept scrolling her phone, pretending not to notice. Janet's confidence wasn't new. Back in D.C., Karoline had faced plenty of suits who thought her youth meant she was soft. She wasn't. She'd earned her spot in the White House by outworking everyone, staying late, triple-checking every fact. Her phone buzzed, pulling her back. A text from her mom. "Speak your truth." "Honey." Karoline's throat tightened. Ellen had sent it from her break at the hospital, probably sipping bad coffee between patients. That text was a lifeline, a reminder of why Karoline had taken this job, to give a voice to people like her parents, who'd been ignored by the elites running places like this studio. She slipped the phone into her blazer pocket and straightened, her resolve hardening. The dream of amplifying Gen Z, of cutting through media spin, felt like it was slipping under the weight of tonight's ambush. But she wasn't ready to let it go. Sarah Nguyen shifted in her seat, watching Karoline through the curtain sliver. She posted a quick X update. "This Trump girl looks nervous. Colbert's gonna eat her alive." The replies poured in, most mocking Karoline's age, her small-town roots. Sarah hesitated, her thumb hovering. She'd grown up in a working-class neighborhood herself, and part of her wondered if Karoline was more than the caricature X made her out to be. The audience around her buzzed, some whispering bets on how long Karoline would last. A stagehand, Tom Reed passed by Karoline, adjusting his cap. He'd been at the show for years, seen guests come and go. Most young ones like Karoline fidgeted or rehearsed lines under their breath. Not her. She stood still now, staring at the curtain like a boxer before a fight. Tom respected that kind of grit. He'd grown up in a mill town, knew what it was like to be dismissed. "You got this," he muttered, low enough that she didn't hear. But his nod carried weight. Janet Myers tapped her clipboard, her smirk widening as she leaned toward Colbert, who was off stage adjusting his tie. "She's just a kid, make her squirm," Janet whispered, her voice dripping with certainty. Colbert nodded, his eyes glinting with the thrill of the hunt. Karoline caught the exchange from the corner of her eye, her stomach twisting. She'd prepared for tough questions, but this felt like a setup, a machine designed to chew her up and spit her out. The curtain loomed, the audience's hum growing louder. She took a breath, her mom's words echoing. "Speak your truth." Karoline stepped toward the stage entrance, her shoulders squared. The lights beyond were blinding, the crowd a sea of expectant faces. She wasn't nervous. Not exactly. She was ready, but vulnerable, like a soldier checking her armor before battle. Janet's whisper lingered in her ears, a warning of the trap ahead. Karoline didn't know how deep it ran, but she knew one thing: she wasn't here to play their game. She was here to fight for the people who'd raised her, and no smirk from Colbert or his producer would stop her. Karoline Leavitt sat under the studio's blinding lights, the heat prickling her skin as Stephen Colbert leaned forward, his grin sharp. The Late Show audience, still buzzing from his earlier jabs, watched her like hawks. Janet Myers' whisper to Colbert make her squirm still echoed in Karoline's mind as she gripped the armrest of her chair. She'd stepped onto this stage knowing it was a trap. But now, with the crowd's eyes on her, she felt the weight of every ex-post calling her a fraud. Colbert didn't miss a beat. "Karoline, let's talk tariffs. Trump's slapping Canada with taxes. Tanking trade. You're defending that." His voice dripped with mock curiosity, and the audience chuckled, ready for her to fumble. Karoline straightened, her voice steady. "American jobs grew 2% since those tariffs. Stephen, look at the steel plants in Ohio, they're hiring again." The crowd murmured, some nodding, others skeptical. Sarah Nguyen, seated in the third row, raised her phone, filming the exchange. She'd expected Karoline to dodge, but those numbers sounded real. Sarah's ex-followers were already lighting up her last post, some calling Karoline a Trump clone, others curious. Colbert's smile tightened, his fingers tapping the desk. He pivoted fast. "Okay, fine. Jobs. But this Russia-Ukraine deal, you're telling me Trump's handshake with Putin isn't selling out democracy?" The audience leaned in, their laughter gone, replaced by a tense hum. Karoline's team had drilled her stick to the script. Don't get personal. But the accusation selling out hit too close to her core. She thought of her dad, Mike, who taught her to stand up when someone twisted the truth, against every instinct to play it safe. She leaned forward. "That deal stopped a war. Stephen, ask the families who got their sons back." Her words cut through the studio, sharp and raw. The crowd gasped, some clapping, others whispering. Sarah's camera caught it all, her thumb hesitating over the post button. Backstage. Janet Myers shot a glare from the shadows, her clipboard clenched tight. She mouthed something to a crew member, her lips tight with irritation. Karoline's defiance wasn't in the plan she was supposed to crack, not fight back. Tom Reed, the stagehand, stood near a lighting rig, his arms crossed. He'd seen guests wilt under Colbert's pressure, but Karoline's fire reminded him of his own daughter, who'd fought her way through a tough school. He gave a subtle nod. Unnoticed by the bustling crew, Colbert recovered, his chuckle forced. "Families. Sure, But you're dodging the point. Trump's cozying up to dictators, and you're the face of it. The audience laughed again, but it was thinner, less certain. Sarah Nguyen frowned, her phone still recording. She'd grown up hearing her parents, immigrants who worked long hours, talk about leaders who ignored the little guy. Karoline's words about families hit a nerve, and Sarah wasn't sure if she was bold or reckless. She tapped her screen, posting the clip to X with a caption, "Is she for real?" The post started gaining likes, retweets piling up fast. Karoline kept her eyes on Colbert, her pulse steady but her mind racing. She'd broken protocol, gone off script, and she could feel Janet's stare burning into her from backstage. Her mom's text, "Speak your truth," had pushed her to speak, but now she wondered if she'd gone too far. The audience's mixed reactions, claps, whispers. A few boos made the air feel electric, like a storm was brewing. She adjusted her blazer, the chipped coffee mug on Colbert's desk catching her eye again. It was a small thing, but it tethered her to home, to the people she was fighting for. Colbert leaned back, sensing the crowd's shift but not ready to let her off. "So, Karoline, you're saying you're proud of this? Standing by every move Trump makes?" His tone was smoother now, baiting her to slip. The audience waited, some leaning forward, others checking their phones as Sarah's video spread. Tom Reed shifted his weight, his gut telling him Karoline wasn't done. Janet Myers tapped her foot, her smirk gone, replaced by a flicker of unease. Karoline took a breath, her next words forming, but she held them back, letting the silence stretch just a moment. Sarah's phone buzzed with notifications. Her post was blowing up, comments flooding in. Some called Karoline a hero, others a mouthpiece. The studio felt smaller now, the lights hotter, as every eye locked on Karoline. She didn't know about the clip, didn't know it was already reshaping the narrative beyond the stage, but she felt the shift, the way the crowd's laughter had dulled, the way Colbert's grin wasn't as easy. She'd lit a spark, and it was spreading faster than anyone in that studio could predict. Karoline Leavitt felt the studio lights boring into her as Stephen Colbert's voice sliced through the air. "So, Karoline, you're just Trump's Gen Z puppet, right?" The words landed like a punch, and the audience roared, their laughter fueled by the flashing cue cards Janet Myers had orchestrated backstage. Karoline's face flickered just a moment of hurt before she steadied herself. Her fingers brushed the chipped coffee mug on Colbert's desk, its rough edge grounding her. She thought of her parents, Mike and Ellen, scraping by in New Hampshire, their faces worn but proud. This wasn't just about her, it was about them, about everyone the elites like Colbert dismissed. The crowd's laughter stung, but Karoline kept her eyes on Colbert, refusing to shrink. Sarah Nguyen, in the audience, clutched her phone, her thumb frozen over the screen. She'd posted Karoline's earlier clip, the one about the Ukraine deal, and X was exploding hundreds of retweets, but most were brutal. "Trump clone," one user wrote. "She's just reading a script," said another, twisting her words about saving families. Sarah frowned, torn. The hate was loud, but Karoline's sincerity on stage, the way she'd stood up to Colbert, didn't feel scripted. Sarah's own parents had faced sneers for their accents, their jobs. She hesitated, watching Karoline closely. Colbert sensed blood in the water and pressed harder. "Come on, Karoline. Ever tell Trump he's wrong, or do you just nod and smile?" His grin was wide, inviting the audience to pile on. The crowd jeered, some shouting. Answer. Janet Myers stood backstage, her arms crossed, a smirk curling her lips. She nodded at a crew member holding a cue card that read "Laugh." The plan was working. Karoline was crumbling, or so it seemed. Tom Reed, the stagehand, watched from the sidelines, his jaw tight. He'd seen guests fold under less, but Karoline's hands, though clenched, didn't shake. Karoline's silence stretched, heavy, almost damning. The audience leaned forward, sensing defeat. She felt the weight of every ex-post, every critic who'd called her a prop. Her mom's text, "Speak your truth," flashed in her mind. But so did the warnings from her team, "Stay calm. Don't make waves." Colbert's question was a trap. Say yes, and she'd betray her boss. Say no, and she'd look spineless. The mug's rough handle pressed into her palm, a reminder of home, of fights she'd won by standing tall. She wasn't here to be their punching bag. Then, Karoline stood, her movement sudden, deliberate. The crowd hushed, caught off guard. Her voice was steady, cutting through the studio's hum. "I'm no puppet, Stephen. I'm here for the people you ignore, folks like my parents, who work hard and get sneered at by guys like you." The words hit like a whip, and the audience gasped. Some clapping, others stunned into silence. Sarah Nguyen's eyes widened, her phone still recording. She hadn't expected that fire, that clarity. Tom Reed's lips twitched, a quiet pride in his nod. Janet's smirk vanished, her clipboard dropping slightly as she whispered to a crew member, "What's she doing?" Colbert blinked, his grin faltering for a split second before he recovered. "Oh, nice speech. But you didn't answer ever push back on Trump." The audience stirred, some cheering him on, others waiting for Karoline's response. She didn't sit, didn't back down. Her eyes locked on his, unflinching. "I'm here to fix what's broken, not add to the noise," she said, her voice low but firm. The crowd split, half booed, half clapped, the studio crackling with tension. Sarah's phone buzzed, notifications flooding in. She glanced down. Her clip of Karoline's stand was going viral. Tagged "Karoline fires back." Retweets climbing by the second. Backstage. Janet paced, her heels clicking furiously. She'd underestimated Karoline, thought her youth meant weakness. Now the crowd was turning. And Colbert's easy charm wasn't enough. Karoline stood tall, her blazer creased but her posture unbreakable. She thought of her dad, fixing machines no one else could. Her mom, saving lives on no sleep. This was her moment to show what she was made of. The audience's noise faded to a dull roar in her ears. She'd drawn a line, and there was no going back. Sarah's screen lit up with comments, some hateful, but others calling Karoline real, a fighter. She hesitated, then posted again. "Say what you want. She's not backing down." The clip spread faster, ex-users sharing it across the country. Karoline didn't know it yet, but her words were reaching beyond the studio, striking a chord with people who'd felt ignored, dismissed, just like her. The lights burned hotter, the air thicker. Colbert adjusted his tie, his next question forming. But Karoline's stand had changed something. The tide was shifting, and no one, not even Janet, could stop it now. Karoline Leavitt stood on stage, the studio's roar still echoing from her bold stand. The late show audience, split between boos and cheers, watched her every move. Stephen Colbert's grin had lost its edge, his fingers drumming the desk as he tried to regain control. Karoline's words, "I'm no puppet," hung in the air, shifting the room's energy. Sarah Nguyen, in the third row, tapped her phone, sharing the clip of Karoline's defiance to X. It was racking up thousands of views, comments flooding in. "She's got guts. Finally, someone real." Sarah's skepticism was fading, replaced by a grudging respect. Karoline's fire reminded her of her own fights against dismissive teachers, bosses who'd overlooked her. Backstage, Tom Reed adjusted a cable, his ears catching Janet Meyer's sharp voice. She was scolding a young crew member, her clipboard jabbing the air. How'd we let her steal the show? She's supposed to be a nobody. Tom's jaw tightened. He'd worked this gig long enough to know Janet's type power hungry, quick to crush anyone who didn't fit their script. Karoline, with her steady gaze and small-town grit, was breaking that script. Tom glanced at the stage, where Karoline stood tall, her blazer creased but her posture firm. He respected that she wasn't playing their game. Colbert, sensing the crowd's shift, pivoted to a softer tone. All right, Karoline, let's get personal. Tell us about you. Where'd you come from? His voice was warm, but his eyes flicked to Janet, who nodded from the shadows. It was a trap, a chance to paint her as just a kid out of her depth. The audience leaned in, curious, some still buzzing from her earlier fire. Sarah Nguyen lowered her phone, waiting. She'd grown up in a neighborhood where hard work didn't always get you noticed, and she wanted to hear Karoline's story. Karoline took a breath, her fingers brushing the chipped coffee mug on Colbert's desk. It was her anchor, a piece of home in this glossy world. I grew up in New Hampshire, she said, her voice clear. My dad, Mike, fixed machines in a factory. My mom, Ellen, was a nurse, working nights to keep us afloat. They taught me to fight for what's right, no matter who's listening. The words were simple, but they hit hard. The audience softened, some clapping, others nodding, a few in the back. Older folks with weathered faces exchanged looks. They knew that kind of life. Sarah's lips parted, her phone forgotten. She hadn't expected Karoline to sound so much like her own family. Colbert nodded, his smile tight. That's nice. Real American story. But you're in the White House now, not a factory. How's a small-town girl handling the big leagues? The question was laced with condescension, and Janet's smirk returned. Her arms crossed as she watched from backstage. The crowd stirred, some laughing, others waiting for Karoline to falter. Tom Reed shifted his weight, his gut telling him she wouldn't. Karoline's eyes met Colbert's. Unflinching, she leaned forward, her voice steady but warm. I handle it by doing the work, like helping draft the Ukraine deal's terms, making sure it saved lives, not just headlines. The studio went quiet, the air thick with surprise. Colbert blinked, his pen frozen mid-tap. You drafted the deal. His voice betrayed a crack, and the audience murmured, heads turning. Sarah's phone lit up with notifications. Her clip was blowing up, and now replies were praising Karoline's grit, her roots. One user wrote, she's not just a face, she's calling shots. Karoline didn't smile, but a spark of hope flickered inside her. She'd let slip a truth she hadn't planned to share, and it was changing the game. Janet's clipboard dropped an inch, her eyes narrowing as she whispered to a crew member. Why didn't we know that? Karoline sat back, her hands folded, the mug still in her peripheral vision. She'd grown up watching her parents solve problems no one else could, her dad coaxing a broken machine to life, her mom calming a scared patient. That was her strength, and she'd just shown it. The crowd's murmurs grew louder, some clapping again, others checking their phones as Sarah's clip spread. Sarah herself stared at Karoline, her earlier doubts crumbling. She posted again. This woman's no puppet. She's legit. The retweets climbed, reaching people far beyond the studio. Colbert adjusted his tie, his chuckle forced. Well, that's impressive. But let's talk about the media ban's AP. Reuters. Gone. You're okay with that? He was scrambling, trying to pull the focus back. Janet nodded from backstage, her smirk gone, replaced by a tense frown. Tom Reed watched Karoline, his nod slower now, like he was seeing something bigger unfold. Karoline felt the shift, the way the crowd's energy wasn't all against her anymore. She'd cracked open a door, shown she was more than they thought, But the fight wasn't over. Colbert's next question was coming, and Janet's glare told her the trap was still set. Sarah's phone buzzed again. An ex-user tagging her clip with a bombshell. Leavitt's been leading policy memos for months. Check the White House logs. The comment was gaining traction, hinting at a deeper power no one in that studio had seen coming. Karoline didn't know about the post, didn't know her words were reaching factory workers, nurses, people like her parents, but she felt the air change, the weight lifting just enough to keep her going. She straightened, ready for whatever Colbert threw next. Her truth out in the open and growing louder by the second. Karoline Leavitt felt the studio's tension coil tighter as the interview barreled toward its close. The late show's lights burned hot, and Stephen Colbert's smile had hardened into something sharper, his fingers gripping his pen like a lifeline. Her revelation about drafting the Ukraine deal had thrown him, and the audience's murmurs, half supportive, half hostile, kept the room on edge. Sarah Nguyen, now fully in Karoline's corner, sat in the audience, her phone glowing with X notifications. Her latest post, praising Karoline's grit, was gaining traction. Retweets piling up from people who saw her as more than a mouthpiece. Karoline didn't know it, but her words were resonating far beyond the studio's glossy walls. Colbert, desperate to claw back control, leaned forward, his voice low and pointed. Karoline, let's talk about censorship. You banned AP. Reuters from White House briefings. That's not freedom, that's control. The accusation landed hard, and the audience erupted. Boos mixing with scattered cheers. Janet Myers, backstage, nodded sharply, her clipboard tucked under her arm as she whispered to a crew member. She'd scripted this moment to paint Karoline as a villain, and the crowd's reaction was exactly what she wanted. Karoline's jaw tightened, her eyes flicking to the chipped coffee mug on Colbert's desk. It was her tether to home, to the people she'd promised to speak for. She leaned into the mic, her voice steady. We're not censoring, Stephen. We're bypassing gatekeepers to reach people directly. Check TikTok. It's all there. The crowd split again, some clapping, others jeering. Sarah Nguyen's fingers flew across her phone, posting. She's calling out the media's filter. Bold. The post shot up, liked by thousands, including factory workers and small-town folks who felt the same distrust. Tom Reed, the stagehand, watched from the wings, his arms crossed. He'd seen Janet's playbook before. Twist the truth, rile the crowd, but Karoline wasn't folding. Colbert's eyes narrowed, sensing the crowd's divide. He glanced at Janet, who gave a subtle nod, her lips tight. He pivoted to his final blow, the trap he'd been building all night. Okay, Karoline, one last thing. Ever defy Trump? Ever tell him he's wrong? The question hung like a blade, and the audience hushed, every eye on her. It was a no-win. Say yes, and she'd be branded disloyal. Say no, and she'd be a puppet. Karoline's pulse quickened, her mom's text flashing in her mind. Speak your truth. She thought of her parents, Mike and Ellen, who taught her to stand up, even when it hurt. Her team's warning, stay safe, don't rock the boat, clashed with her gut. This was her moment. Karoline hesitated, her silence stretching just long enough to make the crowd lean forward. Janet's smirk returned, her fingers tapping her clipboard as if victory was hers. Sarah Nguyen held her breath, her phone ready to capture whatever came next. Tom Reed shifted, his gut telling him Karoline was about to surprise them all. Then, Karoline spoke, her voice clear and firm. I challenge when needed, Stephen, but I back what works for Americans. That's my job. The words landed with force, neither dodging nor groveling. The audience erupted, half cheered, half booed, the studio shaking with their noise. Sarah's phone buzzed as her post exploded, comments calling Karoline fearless, A fighter. Janet's smirk vanished, her face paling as she whispered furiously to a crew member. She hadn't expected Karoline to thread the needle, to turn the trap into a stand. Colbert chuckled, but it was strained, his pen tapping faster. "Well, that's a politician's answer," he said, trying to dismiss her. The crowd wasn't buying it. Some clapped louder. Others shouted support. Karoline sat back, her hands folded, the mug still in her sightline. She'd taken a risk, one that could cost her in D.C. But it felt right. She'd spoken for the people who'd raised her, the ones Colbert's world ignored. Tom Reed moved quietly through the shadows, slipping past a stack of cables. He'd overheard Janet's plan to bury Karoline, seen the cue cards designed to mock her during a quick break. As the audience buzzed and Colbert sipped water, Tom approached Karoline. He handed her a folded note, his voice low. From someone on the crew. Karoline opened it, her eyes scanning the scrawled words, "You're not alone. Keep going." She looked up, but Tom was already back at his post, adjusting a light. The note was unsigned, a small act of rebellion from someone in Janet's machine. Karoline tucked the note into her pocket, her resolve hardening. The crowd's noise filled the studio, a mix of support and anger. Sarah's latest X post was trending now, tagged Karoline fires back, reaching people in diners, factories, and small towns. Karoline didn't know the full scope, didn't see the thousands sharing her words, but she felt the shift, the way the room wasn't entirely against her anymore. Colbert adjusted his glasses, his next question forming. But Karoline was ready. Janet's glare burned from backstage, her plan unraveling. The note in Karoline's pocket felt like a spark, a sign that even in this hostile place, she had allies she didn't yet know. Karoline Leavitt stood firm on the late show stage, the anonymous note, "You're not alone," still tucked in her pocket, its weight fueling her resolve. The studio buzzed with raw energy. The audience split between cheers and boos after her bold defiance of Stephen Colbert's trap. Her words, challenging when needed but backing what works, had cracked the room open, and she felt it. The tide was turning. Colbert, his composure fraying, adjusted his glasses, his grin more grimace than charm. He leaned forward, desperate to reclaim the narrative. "Karoline, you talk about truth. But banning AP and Reuters, that's your truth." He held up a printout, waving it like evidence. "This AP report says your tariffs crushed small businesses. Care to explain?" The crowd murmured, some nodding, others skeptical. Sarah Nguyen, in the audience, scrolled X on her phone, her latest post calling Karoline Gen Z's voice now viral with tens of thousands of retweets. She'd seen the AP report online, knew it was contested, and held her breath, waiting for Karoline's move. Karoline's eyes flicked to the chipped coffee mug on Colbert's desk, her anchor to home. She'd spent nights in D.C., poring over data, debunking shoddy reports like this one. Colbert's misstep was her opening. She leaned into the mic, her voice sharp but calm. That report was debunked. "Stephen, check X small businesses in Ohio posted record hires last quarter. I've got the receipts." The studio erupted, cheers drowning out scattered boos. Some in the crowd chanted Karoline, their voices shaking the air. Sarah's phone lit up, her post surging as users shared screenshots of the debunked report, tagging Karoline fires back. Tom Reed, the stagehand, stood in the wings, his arms crossed, a rare smile breaking through. He'd seen Janet Meyer's planned cue cards rigged to mock Karoline, questions designed to trip her. But Karoline wasn't just surviving, she was winning. Janet, backstage, clutched her clipboard, her face pale as she whispered to a crew member. How did she know that Colbert's hand froze mid-gesture, the printout drooping? He chuckled, but it was thin, unconvincing. "Well, You're quick. I'll give you that, but let's Karoline cut him off. Her voice rising just enough to command the room. I speak for millions you've ignored. Stephen, people who don't trust your headlines because they've been burned before. The audience roared, the sound swelling like a wave. Some stood, clapping, while others sat stunned, their phones capturing every second. Sarah Nguyen posted again. She's not just fighting Colbert, she's fighting the whole system. The clip spread, reaching diners and living rooms across the country. During a brief commercial break, Tom Reed moved fast. He approached Karoline as she sipped water, her hands steady but her eyes alert. Janet rigged the cue cards, he said, his voice low, glancing over his shoulder. They wanted you to crash. You didn't. This was a test, and you're passing it. Karoline's lips parted, the note in her pocket suddenly making sense. She nodded, her jaw tight. Thanks, Tom. He stepped back, returning to his post. But his nod carried weight. He was rooting for her, a quiet ally in a hostile machine. Colbert, unaware of Tom's move, returned to the stage, his smile forced. All right, Karoline, you're passionate, but let's talk results, your policies. She didn't let him finish. Results. Families aren't burying their kids in Ukraine. That's my result. The crowd exploded again, some chanting her name louder, others shouting in protest. Janet's clipboard slipped from her hands, clattering to the floor. Her smirk was gone, replaced by a twitch of panic as she realized the audience was turning, not just on Colbert, but on the media elite she represented. She'd miscalculated, thought Karoline's youth meant weakness. Now the room was hers. Sarah's phone buzzed with a Fox News alert. Karoline Leavitt, the future of conservative grit. CNN's counterspin flashed next, calling her Trump's slick defender. The posts fueled the fire, X trending with her name. Karoline didn't see the alerts, didn't know her words were reaching people like her parents, factory workers, nurses, folks who'd felt invisible. But she felt the shift. The way the crowd's boos were quieter, the cheers louder. She sat back, her hands folded, the mug still in her sight line. Her parents had taught Dank Nan Vat Fula Tom Reed Va Sarah Nguyen her to fight smart, not loud, and she'd done it. Colbert's next question faltered, his voice less certain. The studio felt electric, the air charged with something bigger than a TV segment. Karoline had turned the trap into a stage, her truth cutting through the noise. Janet paced backstage, her heels clicking, her plan in tatters. Tom watched from the shadows, his pride quiet but real. Sarah's fingers hovered over her phone, ready to post again. The crowd's roar hadn't faded, and Karoline's final stand was still reverberating, shaking the foundations of the elite world she'd been brought to dismantle. Karoline Leavitt stepped off the late show stage, the audience's roar fading behind the heavy curtain. Her ears rang with their cheers and boos, but her steps were steady, her blazer creased from the battle she'd just fought. Stephen Colbert's strained handshake lingered in her mind, his grip firm but his eyes avoiding hers. The studio's glossy chaos fell away as she moved backstage, the chipped coffee mug from his desk now clasped in her hands. She'd asked a crew member for it, a small act no one noticed. But to her, it was a piece of home, a reminder of her parents' grit. The note from an anonymous crew member, "You're not alone," still sat in her pocket, its words a quiet fuel. In the dim corridor, Karoline paused, pulling out her phone. X was ablaze with her name. Thousands of posts tagged Karoline Fires Back. One caught her eye. From Sarah Nguyen, the young woman she'd seen in the audience. "You inspired me to speak up. Thank you." Karoline's lips curved, a flicker of warmth cutting through her exhaustion. She thought of her mom, Ellen, texting from a hospital break. Her dad, Mike, cheering from their small New Hampshire living room. This fight wasn't for headlines or Trump, it was for them. For people the elites like Colbert and Janet Myers never saw. Tom Reed approached, his baseball cap tilted back, his face lined but kind. "You did good out there," he said, his voice low. "I'm telling the crew about you, how you didn't let them break you." Karoline nodded, her throat tight. "Means a lot, Tom." He tipped his cap, a quiet promise to spread her story among the stagehands, the folks who kept the machine running. Janet Myers was nowhere in sight, her clipboard abandoned, her plan to humiliate Karoline in tatters. Karoline didn't gloat she'd won by standing tall, not by tearing others down. She slipped the mug into her bag and headed for the exit, the corridor's hum giving way to the city's pulse. Outside, New York's lights glittered, taxis honking in the crisp night air. A young woman stood near the studio doors, filming a TikTok, her voice clear. "We're the new voice," just like Karoline said. Karoline froze, unrecognized in the shadows, watching the woman echo her words. The stranger's phone glowed, her followers already liking the clip. Karoline smiled, small but real, and kept walking, her bag heavier with the mug's weight. She'd lit a spark, and it was spreading without her needing to say more. Sarah Nguyen, still inside, scrolled X, her posts now trending nationwide. She'd started the night skeptical, ready to mock Karoline as another political pawn. Now, she saw her differently, a woman who'd fought for people like Sarah's parents, who'd faced sneers and kept going. Sarah's final post read, "Karoline's not just talk, she's real." It joined thousands of others, from factory workers in Ohio to nurses in small towns, all sharing clips of Karoline's stand. Fox News called her the future. CNN scrambled to label her controversial. But the people posting on X didn't care about spin. They saw someone who spoke for them. Karoline reached the sidewalk, the city's glow casting her silhouette long and sharp. She thought of her parents, of the factory floors and hospital wards they'd worked, of the millions like them who felt invisible. Her fight had been for them, and the mug in her bag felt like a trophy, proof she'd carried their strength. She didn't check X, didn't see the trending post that summed up the night. Karoline Leavitt, puppet or pioneer, it was climbing, shared by strangers debating her role, her future. She didn't need to see it, she'd said her piece, and the world was listening. Tom Reed, back in the studio, cleaned up cables, his mind on Karoline. He'd tell his daughter about her, a woman who'd faced a giant and walked away taller. The crew was already talking, some quietly praising Karoline, others grumbling about Janet's failed ambush. Karoline's words had reached them, too, the unseen workers who rarely got a voice. Outside, the young woman's TikTok clip was gaining views, her followers repeating Karoline's line, "We're the new voice." It spread to other platforms, other cities, other lives. Karoline paused at a crosswalk, the city lights blurring as she took a breath. The mug clinked in her bag, a sound only she heard. She'd come to this stage as an underdog, a small-town kid in a world of elites, and left it as something more. Her next move wasn't clear, not to her, not to the thousands watching her clips. She started walking, her silhouette fading into the crowd, the X-Post's question lingering in the air, unanswered but alive. A chipped mug sat quietly in her bag, carrying more weight than the stage she left behind. Truth doesn't always need a spotlight. It finds its way through steady voices and honest eyes, in a world quick to judge. Who decides who gets to speak? If this story stirred something in you, a memory, a question, or even just a pause, subscribe to Crossfire Justice for more stories that echo long after they end. Thank you for watching.